Welcome to the UX Web Summit, a day of practical advice on creating great user experiences for the web. Your hosts today are Christopher Schmidt, a veteran web designer whom you might know as the author of the CSS Cookbook, 3rd edition, and his partner in crime, Ari Stiles, who previously helped organize South by Southwest. In fact, it was at South by Southwest that the dynamic duo first got the idea to organize conferences that help people make better websites that are more hospitable to humans. And thus was born Environments for Humans. Starting with the CSS Summit in July of 2009, they quickly expanded to cover topics ranging from Django to HTML5 and more. And I was delighted to learn that they were inspired by HEAD, the environmentally friendly 3-day 4-track virtual web conference with local conference hubs, a Second Life conference island, virtual parties, and mixed reality experiments that I organized in 2008 while trying to work on stuff that matters. And in case you're wondering why virtual conferences matter, this map from Time magazine may help drive the point home. It shows the projections of how the world might look if there was to be a 3-degree rise in average surface temperature. The areas in yellow are places that we as humans cannot survive. But where are my manners? I haven't even introduced myself. I'm Aral Balkan, or simply Aral, and these are kittens. And with that, I've just owned every other speaker at this conference. And in Comic Sans, too. Because contrary to popular belief, conferences are just a contest to see who gets to show the kitten slide first. Speaking of the presenters, what a great lineup. You guys are in for a great time. You'll be hearing about topics ranging from designing the first 15 minutes of the user experience to mobile UX and prototyping. But enough about all that, let's talk about me. I'm an interaction designer and developer, but let's forget that bit for now. What's important is the interaction qualifier. It tells me that even though what I do contains elements of graphic design, motion design, and information architecture, the most important bit is the nonlinear, interactive aspect of the medium. And interaction is hard. Think about how difficult it is to interact, communicate with another human being in person when we have all these cues, visual, oral, and yet still we can't always be sure what the other person's feeling. Does she like me? Is he lying? Was that sarcastic? Now, remove the visual cues and imagine you're on the phone. How much harder is it to communicate? Then go further and remove the oral cues also. How many misunderstandings occur when humans talk with other humans over email? Then finally, remove the other human from the equation completely and try to create a pre-scripted artificial entity to communicate with a human being. And by now, it should become frightfully clear how difficult a task it is to build systems that communicate with humans. And not only communicate, but give pleasure and delight to humans. This is such a non-trivial, complicated task that it requires an unrelenting, almost dictatorial focus on user experience. But things weren't always this way. In the early days of computing, when computers cost hundreds and thousands of dollars and were few and far between, user experience didn't matter. Computers in that age, in the age of features, made previously impossible tasks possible. That was the value they added. And it didn't matter whether or not the process was difficult or not, because there was no alternative. However, times have changed. Hardware and software prices have plummeted, and at the same time, processing power has skyrocketed, and supply and choice have increased so much that the industry is now commoditized. A commodity like coffee has a fixed unit price, X dollars per kilogram. Coffee is coffee is coffee. And yet, we pay a special, substantial premium for a certain type of coffee experience. Why? The same is true for mobile phones. In the UK, at least, most mobile phones come free with your contract, but we pay a substantial premium for a certain mobile phone. Why? And how did the company that makes that mobile phone achieve the same thing with an MP3 player? And with the personal computer? I don't know, but something tells me they're onto something. But what sets them apart from the other guy? In other words, when infrastructure is commoditized, what is the differentiating factor? And the answer is user experience. We all know a bad user experience by how it makes us feel. It evokes an emotional response. anger, frustration, hate. So, at the very least, we should be aiming to create experiences that don't drive the user insane. And you can achieve that if you adhere to one simple rule of thumb. Worry about the right thing. Worry about the user's needs, not yours. If the first thing you think about when designing your app is a database schema, you're worrying about the wrong thing. And many times you'll find that when you worry about the user's needs, it will make your life more difficult. But that's okay, and that's how it should be. A great user experience is not born out of laziness. Even creating an experience that doesn't negatively influence the user, in other words, a usable experience, requires focus and dedication, and not just by the UX advocate or one or two people in the organization, but by everyone from the top down. It requires a commitment to quality over quantity. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, the author of The Little Prince, says it best. Perfection is achieved not when there's nothing more to add, but when there's nothing left to take away. So, creating experiences that work, that are usable, is hard enough. But as my friend Aaron Walter says, usable is equal to edible. And no one goes out to a nice restaurant because they want edible food. To understand this, consider Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Certain basic needs like food and shelter must be met before a person begins to seek higher level needs like love and belonging. The same is true for user experience. Unless an app is functional and reliable and usable, we cannot even begin to worry about adding delight and pleasure. So, usable is analogous to edible in food. And while edible is much better than the alternative, we can aim higher and make the experience pleasurable. And we can aim higher and make the experience beautiful. We can aim higher yet and make the experience delightful. And finally, we can aim higher still and create experiences that are awesome. And that brings us to the art of user experience, which is what you will be learning about today. And with that, I leave you with your hosts, Christopher Schmidt and Ari Stiles. Have fun and enjoy the experience.